Hello, Be Awesome listeners. You are listening to episode 74 of the Be Awesome podcast. And my guest today is actually a repeat performer. I think the timing on it is perfect with everything going on with the reopening of schools. He is a longtime friend of mine, one of the only people that I know can beat me in a game of who's got the best socks on today. None other than my friend Paul Timm from FEA Associates. Mr. Paul Timm, how are you, my friend?
Doing really well. Glad to be back. I think the last time we did one of these maybe was in Madison, Wisconsin. So I'm in Illinois. You're on the East Coast. It's fun.
Yeah. So it was that we did it in the boardroom. We did the podcast in the boardroom. You were one of the first guests in 2018, I guess. We didn't launch it until 2019. There was something that happened back then that definitely wasn't COVID that caused the delay. And this thing's going out today, July 23rd, 2020. So I have date and time stamped that this has to go out when completed. So before we get started, this is school focused. This is a school focused podcast. So tell me a little bit about what you do and how you do it and how you work with schools.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to do that. My background is in physical security, and I've been doing that as a second generation person, by the way. My dad started the firm in '84, and I joined in the late '90s. And that firm was called Rita Security. And then in 2017, Facility Engineering Associates purchased Rita Security. But we really do just a couple things, Josh. We do security assessments, and then we follow that up with recommendation reports in schools. We help with emergency planning, and we do lots of training. But as you and I know, there's not lots of training going on now. There's not a lot of conference speaking. There's almost no travel.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting days.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You and I talk about compare notes and frequent flyer miles as we cross the country. And, when we talk about, kind of assessments and security and safety in schools and the things that you do, you do hundreds in any given year, and those are fully occupied schools. Typical thoughts are, some of the thoughts are people gaining entry. How easy is it to gain entry? I've listened to you talk about where trees should be put and the height that they should be, the lighting and all that. That's all with assumption of business as usual. And it's far from business as usual right now, and why this is pretty fitting for us to have this conversation, because even though that's not business as usual, there's still things that still have to happen. There's still going to be people accessing the buildings, and we still want to make sure that they're as secure as humanly possible. So I'll let you pick one of the hot topics that may or may not, and this is something that too, this may not be what we're going to talk about, may not be things that are top of mind for schools. So it's vitally important that they listen to this and they make it top of mind.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And after years and years of more than 100 assessments every year, this year will not be one of those years, I don't think. But for sure, we want to talk about access control, I think, is the place to lead off. And what will it be like as we think about social distancing to have people coming into our buildings? And when I say people, I'm not talking just about visitors, although I want to highlight that in just a moment, but students and staff, because we're used to coming in groups and one right after the next and together and holding hands. And so we're going to have to do those things a little bit different. But I think where most schools are really having some anxiety is over what we'll do with visitor management. And, the first thing we'll do is we'll probably still have them come in our main entry because we have a desk set up and everything, but we're probably not going to have them leave that egress, that same access point. We'll probably, like you've seen in the stores, have arrows pointing them to a different point of egress. And how we'll interact with them at the main desk will be very different. And I'm not doing a sales job here for Raptor, but they really own the market in visitor management software. And I think many schools that have that product don't know some of the great features that they can make use of. For example, with Raptor, I don't need to hand you, if you're the administrative assistant, my ID. I can now put it right in the reader myself. And like a toaster, it draws it down and scans it and then pops it back up and I take it. And the actual printer can be up there as well. So I can take it right off of the printer, hopefully put it in a clear badge that hangs on a colored breakaway lanyard, and I'm good to go without there having been anything involving touch. Because as you know, the word touchless is a big thing today.
Hmm.
Furthermore, Raptor has, and there's no additional cost to these things, that they've got a panic button right in the center of the screen. So if I were to see you come in with that big burly beard and a face mask, and I'm getting a little bit concerned, and of course, I would never be concerned with you, Josh, because you're the friendliest man on the face of the earth. But let's say I saw somebody come in and something didn't look right, I could just hit that panic button. It would automatically, by text and email, notify a couple people that I had designated in the building who could come and help me with visitor management, instead of me, picking up the phone and saying, that person makes me a little bit suspicious. So I really like the panic button. And then finally, I really like the screening options that they have. And those can be programmed, and some of them set or customizable, where if you come in, I can say, welcome to our safe school. Let me just ask you, have you tested positive for COVID in the past? Are you running a fever? And that way, there doesn't have to be a lot of people making it up on the fly. We can just go right through the list and eventually even get into contact tracing. So there's so much that can help schools now, and they should be thinking about these things today instead of after schools open.
So you're more than welcome to plug Raptor. I think that they're a fantastic company. As a matter of fact, the town that I live in, and you and I talk about social media all the time, and how it just can disrupt, good efforts. And there was some question and issue about Raptor a couple of years ago when we implemented it here in Easton. And so I called their office. This is a good business story. I called their office, and a live voice answered, and the person that answered said, "How can I help you?" And I said, my town is having these questions on Facebook, and I really want to answer. I think I have some of the answers, but I'd really like to have confirmation. Is there somebody that I can talk to? And she says, yeah, let me put you through to our CEO. And she put me through to, is it Timm or Jim?
Yeah, it's Jim Vesterman.
Jim Vesterman, yeah. So great guy. He spent about a half an hour on the phone with me as a CEO of one of these big companies to make sure that I understood about, his visitor management software and how it works. And I'm going to ask a couple questions, but this is my entry picture for the day. So for those of you that are watching the video, Paul and I met close to probably 15 years ago. And he always talks about, when he does his assessments, about things to look for around doors, access doors specifically, that could cause you to be worried about easy accessibility, i.e. a rock or a brick outside of a door is typically a smoke break door stopper, but it can be for people to do bad, have bad intentions. So my goal every time I see him on Zoom is I put the most ridiculous door propping device that I can find online. So today, this one's good. It's like two school chairs on top of a door, double doors, holding it open. It's rather creative, but tall people will probably get hit in the head pretty good.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little nauseated just looking at it, but I would love that photo to put in I've got that whole presentation called Improper Access Control. I'd love that.
Yes, I will absolutely give that to you. One of the things that you hit on, and it's I guess it's a questionnaire with Raptor, right? So is that a customizable thing that they can put?
It is. Yeah, they're going to have some program things that you can use or change in any way that you want. And again, it's really an excellent idea.
I think that regardless, whatever people use, I think that access management, and that's not key cards, that's not anything, that's first of all comes down to process, right? I mean, we could do this with paper, we could do this with a very tedious process. It's a tedious way of doing it. We need to have the process down, and then we can get the products to provide how efficient it is. Which I think that tie-in about the questionnaire is big, because there's been, we talk about COVID changes every day. The reopening of schools and how that's going to look changes every single day. We get frustrated about something, and then 24 hours later, it's not there anymore. And one of those things was temperature checks. We were going to be required to do multiple temperature checks every single day. Just 2 months ago, that was implemented. It was going to be mandated. It was going to be required. You were going to have thermal scanning stations. Now that's gone.
Yeah.
So now you really want to make sure, and it's not about liability or accountability. It's about being able, like you say, to be able to trace where this was, where it came from, and hold people self accountable for it's one of those things, like, if you ask the person a question, it's harder for them to lie. If you don't ask them the question, then they can not worry about anything at all. But if you go and you ask someone, hey, have you felt sick lately, they have to answer that question, and they have to do it honestly. So I think that's a great thing. And I think a lot of people, that's not top of mind, right? Because
Yeah.
they haven't had any visitors for six
Yeah.
months and
Yeah.
basically it's been um well, let me ask you, have you had much experience from March to June? Because I mean, schools were still very active with faculty and staff. Like, they still had to get meals for kids that were on the free and reduced programs. They still had to get the Chromebooks for the kids. They still had to do the deep cleaning. Were they putting some of these programs in place, or is this something like right now that you're just seeing like a hot button that everybody's like, oh man, we are behind. We need to catch up before.
No, I think the good news is most people have been thinking about some things because remember, we had retrieval of belongings, whether they belong to staff or to students, and they had to set up ways for vehicles to come onto the property, for items to be loaded into vehicles with people still wearing masks, with proper PPE, all of those things. So that's one. And I think the other thing, Josh, that has happened in society is protests, because schools have had to at least think about what their civil disturbance procedures are. And some didn't even have that in their emergency plan. But if an incident was happening or an event was occurring on or near your property, you have to be prepared for those kinds of things. And one last thing, many states said you cannot be on our playgrounds or athletic fields for a certain period of time. I think that was like April and May. And so what happened when somebody was on your track or on your football field, we had to go and confront that person, even if it was in a very genuine and friendly way, to say, I'm sorry, but by order of the governor, you can't be on the property.
Mhm.
So we've addressed some of those access control things, but there's much more to be thought about, and there are great solutions like this for them.
Hmm. But they're taxpayers. They should be on the field even during a pandemic.
Yeah,
I mean, I tell you what, one job that I didn't envy, and I saw a bunch of it. I think I told you, I've seen a couple of stories and a couple, because I talked to so many schools, were those security and police officers early on that had to go tell people that walk the track that they can't walk the track, and how upset and irate they were
yeah,
at the idea behind that. And I get it. And we've had such incredible changes in life. I mean, I don't own a razor anymore. It's fantastic. It took a little bit getting used to, but Paul Bunyan over here growing it out.
it's
Um,
great.
Hey, it's I've worn pants. This is getting a little personal, but we're close, and my listeners are close. But I've actually worn pants that don't have a drawstring once, since March 13th. The greatest thing in the world right now, men's yoga pants.
Yes,
They,
well,
they don't even have drawstrings. They're elastic waistbands and elastic ankle bands. They're fantastic. The big baggy like MC Hammer pants, comfortable as all get out.
well, and this would never happen to you, but if you put on the COVID-15, that's expandable and ready to go.
It's a new wave, all ways around, but we've got to embrace, adapt, and adjust, and you guys are doing that. And the one thing that caught my interest when I talked to you yesterday about doing this was something that was not even like, I like to think I got most things on my radar screen about what's going on, especially in the education world. We're in it, we're around it. All the people we talk to are business officials, facility directors, school resource officers, so we're in the know. But you dropped a bomb on me yesterday with the drills. Those still
Yeah,
have to happen, right?
yeah.
So they still have to go down. And I don't think that's anywhere on anybody's radar.
Yeah, states are just beginning to issue some guidance on this, but even they are keeping things flexible to a certain extent. And I've talked with now Idaho, Colorado, Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, of course, because that's where I'm based, Kentucky, and South Carolina. And I might not remember them all, but I've been trying to kind of get something here to see where the commonalities lie. And of course, fire is always the top of everybody's minds because there are codes for fire. And almost all states are sticking with you've got to have that first fire drill in the first 10 to 14 days of school. Well, that's, you talk about it being difficult in a normal semester, but in this semester coming up, really difficult because they want everyone to go through the drill, all students, all staff. And if you've done a hybrid thing or a group A and group B, and how are you going to get everyone to go through a fire drill if I come on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and you come on Wednesdays and Fridays? So that one is a big deal. And I just have a couple of things that I think are worth schools thinking about. And number one is, remember, guidance is coming from the state. You want to do your best to follow it as much as possible, but you also want to hold hands with your responders. If there's any disconnect between us and our responders, we're going to definitely have problems. So I think that those two things, state guidance and responders, and then when we get to difficulties, then we use the magic formula of collaboration plus consensus. For specifics, let's get people around the table and say, okay, we get that we have to do this in the first 14 days, but how are we going to do this with social distancing in an egress path to a rally point that's on tennis courts or whatever? And we can fix those things on a case-by-case basis, there's no doubt. But one more thing I wanted to say, Josh, before we get into details is, the perfect thing to do in those group settings is for somebody to have their evacuation map and hold it up, because for as long as we've had those in the buildings, they really have become part of the scenery, have they not? Mm-hmm. I ask teachers about do you have a primary route and a secondary route? Do you have a severe weather shelter in place area? And they start going, actually, I don't even know what's on our maps. I don't know if our maps have ever been updated. So from a visual standpoint, it's a great aid to begin those discussions. And then it helps us if we're going to reroute things or have social distancing in a rally area to then have those as discussion points.
So I'm not that smart. We know that. So what I'm about to say, maybe I may be the only person in the world that is thinking this, but for the last 3 months, any place that I've walked into, I've looked at the floor and with absolute conviction made sure I was walking with the arrows. Do you think that there is going to be something psychological that even though the closest egress is to the left, because the arrows are out going to the right, the people are going to start doing that? Like,
it's a really great question, and yes, I do.
Boom! I got it. I'm smart again.
Yeah, and by the way, we have to think about setting up those one-way hallways for some of the things we're doing anyway. So it's if we're already putting in that as an access control like the grocery stores, why not say, let's also now talk about our drills so that we're not getting people, like you said, who are confused. And because listen, have you caught yourself in the grocery store walking down the wrong way and going, whoops, I got to turn around and or you have somebody wagging their finger at you saying you can't come down this aisle. I've had that happen at the grocery store. So yeah, it's got to be a coordinated effort, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Because I'm just thinking about it. I'm sitting here, and I want to actually I'm going to come back to the arrows and everything, because I think it's important for our listeners to know, and you know the details better than I do, but the importance of drills and testing, because it's a pain, it's a hassle. We all should know. We hear alarm, we go out, we go walk outside, we get a little bit of a break. First of all, it comes at an incredible cost because we have to take our firefighters offline, paramedics, so that they can go and deactivate the alarm, make sure that it's safe and everything else. So when we're talking about staggered schedules, now you got to do double the alarms and double the drills. And people are going to be like, well, this is just such a pain in the neck. What's the importance behind it? Why is it such a big deal? When was the last time there was a major fire or a fire that killed students and teachers? Was it 1950?
It was 62 years ago. It was Our Lady of the Angels Catholic School in Chicago. and almost 100 people died. And after that is when we came in with all of the codes and requirements to do drills and all of that. And there has not been one student that has died in a school fire-related incident since across the whole U.S. because we got it right and we have it down pat.
I think that's
and by the way, 2,500 fires every year in educational institutions are still happening, but no deaths because we've got it right.
Yep. That's, I talk to people and nobody knows that statistic or that fact. And I get it. 62 years, it was 1954, 1956, my math is off, but, or it was in the 50s as what I remembered. I knew it was in Chicago, and I know some of the details. But when I talk to people, I go, when was the last person a student, faculty member was killed in a fire-related incident? Like almost happen all the time. No, it doesn't. 62 years ago. So we're doing something right with these drills, tests, setting up of egresses and exit signs. And that's, this is going to be, and I'm not saying that this is going to cause the first death in 62 years, but I sit here and I go, we have become so wired in the last 4 months, and we went from obnoxious and going 3 wide down a one way to now staying in your lane, right? And making sure you're following the arrows. Now all of a sudden an alarm goes off and you trigger and you go out the door, and then there's an arrow and you go, oh, it's closer way is left for the door, but the arrow says I got to go right, and then you're walking the wrong way. So I think that's a valid concern that people have to figure out, because we're putting stickers and signs everywhere, giving people direction. And I think there's people that would follow that direction over even following the crowd that's going.
It's true. And I want to make an important distinction. All of the states know this. We want to keep as much of what we had in place as possible. When we drill, because of social distancing, we may have to alter things, but in a real emergency, and now I'm going to shift, let's just say, let's stick with fire. Let's say you and I are part of the same class, there's 20 kids in the class, and we go out the proper egress route, out the door to the rally area, and it is a real fire, and you and I are standing shoulder to shoulder. No one will say a word about that, because it's a real emergency, and to get us out was the most important thing. If it's a drill and you and I go out and we're not 6 feet apart and we're shoulder to shoulder, someone's going to come up and say, excuse me, Josh and Paul, this social distancing, you have to stand. And so now take that, Josh, to lockdown, where we put kids on the floor, on the wall where the classroom door is, because people can't see us from the hallway side. And kids are generally smooshed there. There's not a lot of room. But with the drills now, we're probably not going to have the kids do that. We'll have them get up after the announcement, but we'll say, in a real emergency, this is where you're going to go. But today, we're just talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. I'll tell you, I have had the hardest time trying to put myself in a superintendent's shoes. I have a hard time putting myself in most people's shoes. But on a normal day, superintendent and operations staff for a school, on the COVID quarantine time, I sit here and just every day it seems like there's about 6 more things that should take top priority. And the reality of it is, I mean, I don't know what they're talking about in Illinois and some of those other states, but Massachusetts, we're doing a 3 model. We're doing back to school, hybrid, and full virtual. And it's like, how do you prepare for all 3, right? Because back to school is business as usual, other than the directions that you got to walk in. Hybrid is, we're going to have to figure out how to stagger those drills. We're going to have to figure out how we do the visitor management, some other things. And then a fully virtual, you've got to you still have to figure out, how do we manage people coming in and out of the buildings? I think what people fail to understand and see is, just because school isn't in session doesn't mean people aren't there. And then the fourth piece, which is the last one, which I don't see happening anytime soon anywhere, is the after hours use of buildings, which that's
okay. Yeah. And I want to speak to that a little bit, because that does go with access control. But, in the past, school districts and individual schools have had literally just an administrator on duty.
Hmm.
And now in COVID, imagine, let's say we are going to have a little band concert or I don't know, a sporting event. And all of a sudden you've got people in masks walking into your area, your gym, whatever it might be, and we can't identify those people right away. And we have one administrator on duty. There's no way we'll be able to do that. Plus, we can't really put an incident command system in place with just one administrator anyway. So all of that is going to have to change for sure. And you know what will also change is, before we knew if we walked out of the gym and around the corner, we'd find a defibrillator and maybe a first aid kit was somewhere around. We're not going to be able to do that with PPE requirements. We're going to have to say, where are our emergency supplies, and are we bringing them into the activity? The answer will have to be yes. We're going to have to be a lot more prepared and equipped than we were before.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I'm thinking about all the things that you were doing before this. And it boggles my mind. And I just sit here and say, well, how we can open the schools back up for a pickup basketball game, but if we don't have all of what you're talking about on top of that to be able to disinfect, sanitize, and do all that's needed to get the kids back in,
Yeah.
I mean, think about all the planning that has to go into this stuff. This is like,
Well, and our firm helps on the engineering side with cleaning. We've been doing a lot of cleaning planning with districts. I don't know if you know this, but almost every disinfecting product has a little code on it. So it's been rated. It has to be on a flat surface for X amount of time before it's actually disinfected, which is contrary to what we've done, especially in our homes. You go spritz, 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 you wipe it off
spray
and
and
you're
wipe.
done. And it might not have really done any disinfecting whatsoever. So this is all becoming revelational to our facilities personnel as they go, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And some are going, well, I've got everything electrostatic, or I've done, all of these are talking points, but have to be implemented in an overall plan. Otherwise, you could be fooling yourself in terms of whether or not you've really done a good job.
With no standardized protocol yet.
Yeah.
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 And that spray and wipe, I actually had a friend on my other podcast that you are on, the Operate Intelligently, Greg Lookabout, who I think you met from Texas. And he talks about, we have to clean for health, not for appearance. Like that spray and wipe, that it looks clean, but did we actually do the job? And so I'm seeing a ton right now of activity with custodial trainings and lots of new process and trying to develop protocol, but I don't think it's going to get standardized and squared away. Especially with, I mean, it's too much. It's a lot of stuff going on.
And we were working with a district. A maintenance person tested positive and let the district know. And the security director actually did a really wonderful job of coming in and doing the contact tracing using video and all of those things to see where that person was, who they encountered. And they interviewed that person just to verify where were you. And then they tracked it all after that. But imagine what it takes to do all of this. And by the way, we can do it. We might not be able to do it perfectly, but we do have tools in place. And it's just making sure that we're aware of those things. And what does that take? It takes education, collaboration, et cetera, to get it done.
I mean, if anybody ever wanted security cameras and couldn't get them because people always say, security cameras don't prevent the crime. It just gives us evidence after the crime. But I think that for contact tracing, I'm sitting here, I mean, every place has got a camera. I didn't even think, when you were saying about contact tracing, like, how do they contact trace? They just ask the guy to do his cookie crumbs where he went, but they do the cameras and they follow him walking around the halls and what he touches and where they go. That's pretty wild stuff.
It's incredible.
So what else are you working on now? Well, first of all, you have a book, right?
I do, and I'm working on the second edition. So thank you for asking. In fact, I'm trying to pick up the pace because my manuscripts for the second edition are due by the end of August. Yep. And so then the second edition will come out either at the very end of the year or the beginning of 2021. But so that's a big project for me right now.
That was is a similar name to the first edition. I mean, it was a really well thought out title. I mean, I was trying to think of how you came up with it.
Yeah, it's so funny. I always tell people it's all about school security, so I call it school security.
Yeah.
But it's going to have the same title. There's a little subtitle as well.
Yeah.
All of that will be the same. It'll just say second edition, but we've updated or are in the process of updating everything because resources change and issues change, and even because we address even bullying prevention, and there things like that have updated and changed. And I'm just so thankful for so many people who have helped me as I've gone, because the last thing you want to do, especially when I've got a chapter on social media risks and solutions,
Yeah.
is still have a section that talks about Vine, because Vine's been gone. So yeah, I have to be careful in picking and choosing, and I've really relied on industry partners to say what will stand the test of time, and if it won't stand the test of time, what are the principles that will stand the test of
Yeah. Have you talked to the guys from Gaggle?
time. I have not.
Oh my God, you gotta check those. You gotta check them out. Their technology. I can't remember the name of it. I'll get you hooked up with those guys. I connected with them years ago because it was close to Google, so I figured they got to be doing something good. But they have technology where they can get alerted to keywords, and they've prevented hundreds of
Yeah.
suicide based on bullying and thing. I think every district should have a gaggle or something like it in there. I mean, that's just a
I'd love to
no-brainer.
get it. And
Yeah.
I know that the term digital threat assessment is a fairly new term. And Safer Schools Together has really done a great job of teaching districts how to do that digital threat assessment. And that'll definitely be a component of what we talk about. But I'll look up Gaggle for sure.
Yeah, I'll hook you up. I know a couple of those guys. They're just good group, good company. Um, I saw digital threat assessment twice on the thread for LinkedIn today. Two people posted stuff on it. So, hey, you know what? Before we go, let's talk about. Can I talk about social media for a minute? Because there's just so much going on right now. I mean,
Yeah.
this is crazy. I mean, people are just understandably so. We're in stage 5 of the 6 stages of disaster they talk about all the time, which is this is the disillusionment stage or the crash stage. This is when we're our worst to ourselves and worst to others around us. Social media is just going crazy with people not being nice to each other. All sorts of trolling and all sorts of craziness, and people are getting more active. It's an election year, so there's going to be all sorts of nut stuff going on. What should parents and faculty, or what should people be doing? Best practices on social media? Where should they be? What should they be on the lookout for kids? I always like asking you this, and like you say, the first book had Vine, and it's not there anymore. So what's hot, what's not, and what to do?
Yeah, thank you for asking, and I'll be as brief as I can. First of all, my 4 kids are my chief source of information,
Mhm.
and so really the whole idea here is education. And I've told administrators and teachers over the years, please don't be the person who boycotts everything. It's like saying, okay, I see everybody in the swimming pool. I hope they do well. I don't know how to swim, so I just hope it goes well. That would be foolish. You don't need to be in the pool all the time, but you do need to know how to swim. And so for social media, I always say, please don't boycott, get educated. And then you can help people with, like, for example, security settings on Facebook. You can help people make sure their Instagram account is private and not public. But I will tell you this, there is one area that a platform I told my kids, I don't want you on there anymore, and that's TikTok. And I don't know if you've read anything about it, but the latest education I've seen is it's been reverse engineered, and there is nothing, no platform known to man that's more invasive from a privacy standpoint than TikTok. Basically, if you've got that, they own all information about you that could ever have been on that phone. And so I told my own kids that's one place I want you to vacate, and they have. But otherwise, in terms of things like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat, while I don't think that everybody has to be there, I do think you want to be educated and know about it. And in many of those places, I am there just so I can be more aware.
Mm-hmm. The TikTok thing, my 13-year-old was on it. Amazon temporarily pulled it from all employees' devices. I told them to deactivate it, and then there was a report that was false about the reverse engineering. But I think that there was probably another. There's always 3 different ways of how people look at things. I'm gonna probably go have them
It must be vetted. And
shut it
again,
back off. Yeah.
yeah,
No, I mean, if this is the thing, if there's technology out there that can do what they're saying it can do, and somebody's got proof of it, and they did it once, who's to say they didn't do it a billion times? And what are they using it for? And what are they looking for? I mean, maybe they did it a bunch of times, didn't find anything, but they're looking for
Yeah.
some of the good dirt. I'm not getting TikTok. I got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and I do most of my stuff on LinkedIn. And who wants to know about my business background? They're not much they're going to be able to want to look for there. And Facebook's for old people, I guess, is what they say. But
Yeah, either way, Facebook teaches us about two-factor authentication, which we want to use every time we're online, if possible, with anything we do, including online banking. And Twitter is a chief method of mass notification. Your schools are going to have a Twitter account, and that is how we are going to get information. We get to choose who we follow. You don't have to follow your governor or the president, but we get to choose who we follow. And listen, we're in a day where everybody is their own PR agent and everybody has their own PR engine. So we want to be smart about how we're doing that, and to have that ongoing dialogue with our kids and with each other is so important.
yeah, my friend, always learn something new. And you sometimes put the fear of God in me, but you always get me thinking, and you always got me looking. And it's one of those things. And we had a town meeting last month that I went to. There was 350, 400 people there, and I stood in a certain spot, and I went up, and part of it was, I shared that, you guys all were told where to sit, and you sat there so you felt safe. I said, I stood in the safest place. You guys are all in the kill zone. I'm sitting in the safest spot in the middle of the room. I'm like, man, all these threat assessments and all these overviews and discussion points and everything. I walk into a room and I'm going, where am I the safest? Thanks to Paul, Timm, and friends. So I appreciate you keeping me safe and keeping me grounded, and also my point of contact when anything bad happens for me to call and be talked down or explain something to. So I appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for
Well,
giving the
and
time.
listen, what you're doing with Be Awesome is really great. And I love listening to you. And like I said, or you mentioned earlier, we get to see each other when we're traveling. We get to see each other now, right only through Zoom, but I greatly value our friendship.
You too, my friend. Before I go, I'm sure I've got at least one or two people that have listened to this. How can people get a hold of you? Are you doing assessments? Are you still going out to schools if somebody wants you? What does that look like? What are you doing right now?
Mostly what we're doing is virtual. There are opportunities that we've been able to get into buildings, and of course we would do that through all proper PPE and social distancing if that was needed. So the answer to both of those is yes. And in terms of my cell phone, it's a 630-776-5262. And then, my email address is just paul.timm. Yes, I have two first names, but the last name has two M's, which makes it official. But it's paul.timm@feapc.com. And so I think those are the two best places to get me. And, we take a lot of phone calls for people who are just saying, gosh, we're stuck. Can you at least point us in the right direction? And the answer is yes, we can do that. I don't have a bat phone, but I do answer almost every call I get within reason. I can help.
Oh yeah, no, you answer all the time, even if you have to hang up almost immediately. You're one of the most responsive, receptive, and anytime someone openly gives their cell phone number, that means they want to talk to someone. So that's my key for people to say, and I'll put all that information in the show notes. Appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing. You make such a difference to help keep our schools and our students, our kids safe in the country, and look forward to seeing you in person soon, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Be safe.
Well, that will do it for this episode. I hope you guys got something out of this in regards to opening back up to school. I know there's a lot of people that have kids or people that are working at schools, and just know that behind the scenes, there are countless people working to make sure that processes and programs and the 1,000,001 new moving pieces to go along with the 1,000,000 moving pieces that they had prior to this are being put in place, and they're doing the absolute best they can. So let's make sure that we're supportive. Let's make sure that we're trying to find the greatest results, and realize that, everybody's got a story. Some people have been directly affected by COVID. Some people feel like they're healthy as a horse and won't catch it. There's lots of different trains of thought, and that's the beauty of this country. We all get to have that independent thinking. So That'll do it for this episode. I got to tell you, a friend of mine, past guest, Andrew Appleton, put a post today reminding me on the last day that I was traveling in North Carolina. He was in North Carolina with us, and I was with the sales team, and I had one of the younger sales reps making cold calls, and I said to him to make sure he told the person he's never talked to before that he loved him, and he asked me why, and I said, well, if you love what you do, and if you love the people that you serve, then saying I love you should be the easiest thing for you to do. So I appreciate you, Andrew, and to you, the listeners here. I love you all. I appreciate everything you're doing. Please share with your friends if you like me. If you don't, josh@beawesome.com. I'll do what I can to fix it or at least listen. And appreciate all of you guys weathering this storm together with us, and look forward to the next episode, potentially school focused or maybe local focused. All my local Easton businesses, you guys are on fire. You're doing such great work. I know you guys are running 1,000 miles an hour. I'm hoping to get some more people on, but because I don't have them on doesn't mean they don't want to. It just means that they're running on all cylinders, trying to keep things going and keep people employed in our wonderful little town. So if you can be anything, be awesome.